Hello and welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast. We are so glad you're joining us today for another deep dive.
It's great to be here.
Now, I want you to picture a scenario. It is, it's arguably one of the highest pressure environments a human being can step into.
Okay.
The stakes are incredibly high, emotions are volatile, you are likely operating on zero sleep, and you have about 3 days to plan an event for 200 people where everyone is secretly, or not so secretly, judging every single detail.
That sounds like a nightmare corporate merger or a high-stakes diplomatic summit, something with a lot of cameras.
Worse, it's a funeral. And today we are zooming in on a specific, tiny piece of that puzzle that I think most people completely, and I mean completely, overlook until it's way too late.
And that piece is?
We are talking about the paper.
The paper?
Specifically funeral folders. And look, I know what you're probably thinking. You guys are doing a full deep dive on cardstock? Are we going to talk about gram weight and bevel cuts for an hour?
Right. Is this an arts and crafts show now?
Exactly. But we've been reading through this source, A Compassionate Guide to Funeral Folders. And correct me if I'm wrong here, this isn't really about paper at all, is it?
Not even close. I mean, sure, physically it's paper, but when you actually unpack this guide, you realize we're talking about emotional infrastructure. We're talking about user experience design, UI, UX, but for people who are actively grieving.
User experience for grief.
Yeah,
I love that framing. Because usually when we think of UI, we think of apps or websites. We think of buttons and menus.
Of course.
But a funeral has a user interface, too.
It absolutely does. And it's a really high-stakes interface because the users, the family, the guests, they're all operating at a cognitive deficit. They are in shock.
Right. Their brains are just not firing on all cylinders.
Not at all. And the source material, it positions the funeral folder not as some kind of brochure, but as a tool for order in chaos.
Order in chaos. That's good.
And that is really our mission today. We want to figure out how a simple bifold piece of heavy paper can stop a grieving family from having a complete mental breakdown on a Tuesday night.
And that is not hyperbole. We are absolutely going to get into the Tuesday night crisis a bit later, which I think everyone who has ever planned a funeral will recognize instantly.
I hope you will.
But let's start at ground zero, the definitions. Because before I read this guide, I used these words completely interchangeably. I thought a program and a folder were the same thing, just the thing you get at the door.
The thing you hold, the menu for the service, so to speak.
But the source draws a really hard line here. It says, if you confuse these two things, you're basically setting yourself up for a world of logistical headaches.
A world of pain.
So what is the technical difference? What separates a funeral program from a funeral folder?
Okay, so picture a book. A funeral program, in the, the industry sense, is a booklet. It's multiple pages, usually stapled in the middle, what we call a saddle stitch in printing terms.
Okay, like a little magazine.
Exactly like a magazine. It has a fixed layout. Page 1 is the obituary. Page 2 is the order of service. Page 3 might have a poem. Page 4 is the thank yous from the family. It is bound. It is a finished object.
So it's a closed system. Once you staple that thing, that's it. You're done.
That's it. It is a static document. A funeral folder, on the other hand, is completely different conceptually. The guide defines it as a presentation sleeve or a container.
The container.
It's usually a bifold, so folded once, like a greeting card or maybe a trifold. But, and this is the absolute critical part, it is designed to hold loose inserts.
Ah, so it's the difference between a magazine and a file folder.
That is the perfect analogy. The program is the magazine, the content is printed on the pages, and you can't move it around. The folder is the file. Its entire job is to hold other things. It acts as a jacket or a sleeve.
And, initially that distinction feels really small, right? Like, okay, one is stapled, one isn't. Who cares?
Seems like a minor detail.
But as we got deeper into the logistics section of the source, that one structural difference basically changes the entire workflow of planning the funeral.
It changes everything. I mean, everything. It changes the timeline, it changes the budget, and most importantly, it changes the stress level. It effectively alters the whole project management methodology of the funeral.
Okay, so let's dig into that flexibility aspect. Because the source calls this the program versus folder debate. Why does the guide argue that the folder, the container concept, is so often the superior tactical choice for a modern funeral?
Well, it really comes down to what the source calls the last-minute factor.
The last-minute factor.
Yeah, let's go back to that scenario you painted at the very beginning. You have 3 days to plan this whole event. You are exhausted. You're making decisions about caskets, flowers, music, catering, all of it.
And you're grieving. You're literally crying in between phone calls. Your brain is just soup.
It's soup, right. Now, imagine in that state, you choose the program, the stapled booklet. To print a booklet, you need all the content finalized before you print a single copy.
Every last word has to be perfect.
Every last word. You need the final order of speakers, the exact lyrics of the song, that one high-res photo of the deceased that isn't blurry, the obituary text perfectly proofread by 3 different family members. You need it all done at the same time.
Because if page 3 is wrong, the whole book is wrong. You can't just fix page 3.
Precisely. It's what we'd call a waterfall process in project management. You can't move to the next step until the previous one is 100% locked in. So you send the file to the printer on Tuesday for a Wednesday service. You order 200 copies. They are printed, folded, and stapled. And then Tuesday night at 9 p.m., your Uncle Bob calls.
Oh no. I know exactly where this is going, Uncle Bob. He's the variable you didn't account for.
Uncle Bob is always the variable, and he says, hey, I actually can't do the eulogy because my flight from Chicago just got canceled, or even worse, actually, we found this poem that Mom wrote herself in 1960, and we have to include it. It's vital to her memory.
Or the organist calls and says, I can't play that song. We have to swap it for something else. Something simple.
Any of those things. And you're sitting there looking at a box of 200 beautifully printed, stapled booklets that are now essentially historical fiction.
They're wrong. And you're just sitting there looking at a box of expensive mistakes.
You are done. You have 2 choices, and they're both bad. Choice A. You hand out incorrect programs. I mean, do you cross things out with a Sharpie? No, that looks terrible. So you just hand them out knowing they are wrong, which feels awful because you want everything to be perfect. It feels like you're disrespecting their memory.
It feels like a failure.
Or choice B. You throw them all in the trash and pay a massive rush fee to reprint everything at 6 o'clock in the morning, hoping they're ready in time.
That is the decision fatigue breaking point. That's the moment people absolutely snap. It's the straw that breaks the camel's back.
It is. Now let's flip the script. Imagine you chose the mural folder instead. You bought 200 beautiful pre-printed folders. Maybe they have a nice dove on the cover or a sunset or a religious symbol. Those are done. They are sitting in a box, ready to go. You aren't printing on them. You are putting things inside them.
So the shell is secure. The expensive part of the printing, the color cover, that's safe.
The shell is safe. Now, you are just printing the inserts. You have a single sheet of regular paper with the order of service. You have a separate, smaller card with a prayer on it. Uncle Bob calls at 9:00 p.m. with the big change. You say, okay, Bob, no problem. You hang up, you go to your computer, you change the text on that one order of service Word document, and you reprint just that one sheet.
You don't touch the expensive folder. You just swap out the piece of paper inside.
You swap the insert. The source calls this modular planning. It's brilliant. It builds a renovation buffer, an error buffer, right into your timeline. It gives the family permission to change their mind right up until the doors open for the service.
Honestly, that's just smart engineering. It decouples the expensive, fixed part, the folder, from the volatile, changeable part, which is the information.
Decoupling is the exact right word. It separates the container decision from the content decision. And for a grieving brain that can't multitask, that can't handle complex dependencies, that separation is an absolute lifeline.
It also seems to address the growing complexity of modern services. The source brings up this idea of managing multiple elements. Funerals today are rarely just one single event anymore. It's not just, meet at the church, go to the cemetery, go home.
Not at all. Right. The whole ecosystem of the funeral has expanded. You might have the viewing or the wake the night before.
Okay.
Then you have the main service, maybe at a church or a funeral home. Then there's often a separate graveside committal service. And then you have the reception or the repast afterward. That's 4 distinct events.
And each of those events kind of requires different information for the guests.
Exactly. At the viewing, you might just want a nice photo and a contemplative poem. Something quiet for people to reflect on. At the main service, that's where you need the heavy lifting. The liturgy, the lyrics to Amazing Grace, the full list of pallbearers.
All the details.
Right. And at the graveside, you really only need the committal prayer and maybe directions to the restaurant for the reception.
So if you have a stapled booklet, a program, you're handing out the same thick book at every single one of those stages.
Which is just clumsy. You're telling people, okay, everyone, please turn to page 4 for the graveside part. It feels bureaucratic and clunky. Or even worse, you're just handing out loose, random pieces of paper at every stage.
Oh, I've been that guest. I've been handed the loose papers.
We all have.
I remember standing in a cemetery in November. It was windy. It was cold. I'm holding a tissue because I'm crying. I'm holding my purse. I'm trying to button my coat. And someone comes by and hands me a single, slippery little prayer card.
And then the wind blows.
And then I'm chasing a prayer card across the grass while trying to look dignified and mournful. It's a complete disaster. You feel so foolish.
It creates physical clutter, which immediately leads to mental clutter for the guest. The folder solves this problem by acting as the central hub. You can customize the contents for each moment. The guest walks in, they get the folder. Inside, everything is neatly tucked into that little pocket. The prayer card for later, it's in the pocket. The map to the reception, in the pocket. It's all secure.
It's like a little survival kit for the guest for the whole day.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. The source really emphasizes that the folder manages the loose paper problem. It makes the guest feel secure because they have everything they need in one neat package. They aren't juggling.
Which actually segues perfectly into the whole user experience side of this. Because we've talked a lot about how this helps the family, the planners. It saves them from that Uncle Bob crisis.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the guest, the user. The guide makes a really profound point about unfamiliar emotional spaces.
This really stood out to me, too. It's such a keen observation. We often just assume guests know what to do at a funeral. But even if you were in a church you've been to 1,000 times, a funeral completely changes the physics of the room.
Oh, 100%. The vibe is heavy. People get awkward. You walk in and you suddenly feel like you forgot how to walk, how to sit in a chair.
People are terrified of making a mistake. They're thinking, do I sit here? Is this row reserved for the family? When are we supposed to stand? Do I say amen out loud? Is it okay if I don't know the words to the song? There is this low-level hum of social anxiety in the room.
So the stationery of the folder isn't just about reading the words. It's about orientation. It's a map.
It is a map. When an usher hands you that folder, they are implicitly saying, we have a plan. Don't worry, here's the script for the next hour. You are safe.
Yeah.
The source calls this quiet support.
Quiet support. I like that.
Yeah. The guest opens the folder and sees Step 1, song. Step 2, reading. Step 3, eulogy. They can relax, their shoulders drop a little. They know how long they have to sit there. They know what is expected of them.
It just lowers the collective heart rate of the entire room. It lets them focus on why they're there, to remember the person who died, rather than focusing on their own social anxiety.
Exactly. And that's the mark of good design, isn't it? It goes unnoticed. If the folder works, if the papers stay inside, if the font is readable, the guest focuses entirely on the service and the memory of the deceased. But if it fails, if papers are slipping out, or if they're confused about what comes next, it adds a layer of subconscious stress to an already stressful situation.
The source had that great reflection where they noted that families often express gratitude for this later. At the time, they're just in survival mode, just trying to get it done. But weeks later, they look back and say, you know what, I'm so glad we had that organized. It just felt right.
It's a delayed realization of value. And there's a tactile thing here, too, a physical thing, which the source touches on regarding accessibility. Think about your grandmother attending this service, or anyone who is elderly or frail.
Or just anyone who is sobbing and their hands are shaking.
Right. Holding a flimsy piece of standard printer paper, that standard 20-pound bond paper that just flops over in your hand, is actually kind of hard if your hands aren't steady. It rustles, it bends, it feels cheap.
It feels disposable, which is not the feeling you want.
Not at all. A folder is rigid. It's made of cardstock. It gives you something solid, something substantial to hold on to. It anchors you physically. It sounds like such a minor thing, but for an elderly guest, that rigidity is a real kindness. It's dignified. It allows them to participate without struggling with the materials themselves.
I want to pivot back to the psychology of the family that's planning all this. We mentioned decision fatigue earlier, but I really want to go deeper on this. The source says planning a funeral involves dozens of decisions in a compressed time frame.
Which is a very polite way of saying cognitive overload. You are making high-stakes financial and emotional decisions every single hour, on the hour, for 72 hours straight.
And the trap, the high guide calls it the perfection trap, is so real. Families feel like if they pick the wrong font or the wrong picture, it somehow means they didn't love the deceased enough. It's completely irrational, but grief makes this irrational.
Of course. It's a proxy for control. You can't control the fact that someone you love has died. That is completely out of your hands. So you try to hyper-control the things you can touch. The flowers, the music, the font size of the obituary. You pour all of that free-floating anxiety into the tiny details.
So how does the folder concept help break that destructive loop?
The whole philosophy that the guide presents is one of simplicity. The folder creates a boundary. It simplifies the choices. When you choose a pre-designed folder, say the blue linen design or a forest landscape theme from a catalog, you have made the big aesthetic choice. Boom, done. You don't have to design the cover yourself. You don't have to worry about margins or bleed lines or finding high-resolution cover art.
You're essentially outsourcing the design part so you can focus on the content part.
Yes, you are compartmentalizing. You're saying, okay, I have the container, it's beautiful and it's done, now I just need to write the poem. It turns a massive, sprawling graphic design project into a simple fill-in-the-blank exercise. And for a tired, grieving brain, fill-in-the-blank is a lifesaver. It protects your energy for the things that actually matter, like writing the eulogy or just hugging your family.
Speaking of the blue linen, let's talk aesthetics. The look and feel. The source asks, what does a thoughtful folder look like? What are the trends? I mean, are people doing like neon green folders with glitter?
I mean, you never say never. If the deceased was a famous rave promoter, maybe. But no, the guide really emphasizes cohesion. The design should support the emotional tone of the day, not scream for attention.
So it's the frame, not the painting.
Correct. It should be a beautiful frame. Think neutral palettes. Soft creams, blues, grays, muted greens. Nature imagery is huge: sunsets, forests, oceans, mountains. These are universal symbols of peace and transition. They are safe, they are comforting. But the biggest trend, the source notes, is probably the personalized photo.
Putting the face of the loved one right on the front cover.
Yes. And this brings us to a specific pitfall the source warns about. They call it the clutter trap.
And is that where you try to put every single photo you have of the person on the folder?
Yes. Exactly. We see this all the time. Families with the best of intentions want to include the baby photo, the wedding photo, the graduation photo, the photo with the dog, the photo from last Christmas, and they try to collage it all onto one bifold cover.
And it ends up looking like a ransom note.
Ah.
Or like a bad MySpace page from 2005.
It looks chaotic. And from a practical standpoint, it's very hard to print well.
Yeah.
If you are doing this DIY, which we'll get to in a minute, aligning a collage like that is a technical nightmare. The source gives some great advice here. Thoughtful selection is more meaningful than volume.
Pick one great photo.
Pick one great photo, let it breathe, give it white space. Let that single image tell the story. It honors the person far more than a cluttered, busy mess does.
That's so hard to do, though, isn't it? Choosing just one photo feels like you're leaving out huge parts of their life. Feels like a betrayal, almost.
It is incredibly hard. But that's where the inserts come in again. This is the beauty of the modular system. If you have 20 photos you absolutely love, don't try to cram them all in the folder cover.
Right.
Put them on a big display board in the lobby. Or, and this is a pro tip right from the guide print, a separate photo collage insert on its own piece of paper and tuck it inside the folder.
Ah, see? There is the modularity again. You keep the cover clean and dignified and timeless, but you hide the busyness inside the pocket.
Exactly. You get the best of both worlds. You get the dignity and elegance of the clean design on the outside, and you get the richness of the full life story with all the content inside.
Let's move to section 4, which is all about that content. The contents, what actually goes inside. The source has a laundry list: order of service, obituary, prayer cards, poems, photos, thank you notes. It sounds like you could end up with a pretty thick folder.
It can be a lot, which is why that volume warning is so important. The guide repeats this idea. Thoughtful selection is more meaningful than volume. You don't have to include everything on that list. It's a menu of options, not a checklist.
So it's about curation. It's about being an editor.
Yes. Curation is an act of love. You are choosing the specific poem that really meant something to them, rather than just grabbing the first thing you find on Google to fill the space. And this is where the mix and match dialogue from the source comes in. It's interesting. The source mentions that some families actually use both a program and a folder.
Oh, really? How does that work? I thought it was a strict either situation.
Not necessarily. It's a bit more advanced. They might, for example, print a simple stapled booklet just for the order of service, because maybe it's a very long traditional Catholic Mass with a lot of text and responses.
And you want that bound together so people don't lose their place.
Exactly. But then they place that booklet inside a larger, more beautiful folder, along with a separate, high-quality prayer card and maybe a memorial bookmark.
Oh, I see. So the folder becomes the gift bag, essentially. It holds the program and all the other little keepsakes together in one place.
And it protects those items. If people want to take that prayer card home and put it in their Bible, it's not getting bent and crumpled in their pocket because it was protected by the folder during the service. It just elevates the entire presentation. Instead of handing someone 3 separate things, you hand them one beautiful, cohesive package.
Now, we have to talk about production. This is really where the rubber meets the road. You're stressed, you're crying, you've made your content choices, and now you have to actually print something. The source outlines two main paths, the DIY route and the professional route. Let's start with DIY. Who is this for, realistically?
Realistically, the DIY route is for families who already have some design experience. If you are comfortable with Microsoft Word or Canva or maybe even Photoshop, this might be a good cathartic outlet for you. It's also for those with very strict budgets or an immediate, like, we need this in 2 hours turnaround time.
But the source seems to have a lot of pretty stark warnings about DIY. It doesn't sound like they recommend it for the faint of heart.
They really don't. And we need to get a little nerdy here for a second to explain why, because I think a lot of people think, oh, I have a printer at home, I can do this.
I print recipes all the time. How hard can it possibly be?
Famous last words. Okay, so let's talk about paperweight. A good funeral folder is usually printed on cardstock, let's say 80-pound or 100-pound cover stock. It's thick. It has substance.
Okay.
Your average home inkjet printer, the one you bought for $50, is designed for 20-pound copy paper. It's designed for homework assignments. When you try to feed 100-pound cardstock through those little plastic rollers, it jams.
Oh, the dreaded paper jam.
The rollers can't grab it, or it gets halfway through and stops. So now at 2 o'clock in the morning, you are fighting with a printer that is literally eating your expensive paper.
That is a very specific and visceral kind of rage. I can feel my blood pressure rising just hearing you describe that.
Oh, it gets worse. Let's talk about ink coverage. If you have a design with a lot of black or dark blue, maybe a dark background with white text, and you print that on a home inkjet, the paper gets wet, it saturates with ink, it starts to curl up at the edges as it dries.
Right, it gets wavy.
And if you touch it even a second before it's perfectly 100% dry, it smears. Now you have ink on your fingers, ink on the table, and a completely ruined folder. And you've just wasted 5 minutes waiting for it to print.
And we haven't even talked about the folding yet.
The folding. This is the silent killer of DIY stationery projects. If you were doing a trifold, getting those creases perfectly straight and crisp on 150 copies by hand, it is incredibly tedious and difficult. If you just fold it with your fingers, the spine cracks, the toner or ink flakes off along the crease.
I hadn't even thought about that. You assume you just bend the paper, but if you bend thick paper, it looks cracked and messy along the fold.
It looks awful. To do it right, you need a scoring tool like a bone folder to create a channel in the paper first, and then you fold it. And if your fold is off by just 2 millimeters, the whole thing looks sloppy. The inside flap sticks out. It doesn't close flat. So unless you are a very crafty person who already owns a bone folder and a high-end printer, the DIY route is a minefield of frustration just waiting to happen.
Which, of course, leads us to the professional route. The source really highlights the value of outsourcing this task. And it's not just about the final quality, right?
No. I mean, yes, the quality is objectively better. A professional print shop has industrial-grade laser cutters and scorers and digital presses that lay down ink perfectly every time. But the real value is the emotional benefit.
Outsourcing allows the family to focus on emotional needs rather than technical details. That line from the guide really stood out to me.
It's about giving yourself permission. Permission to let someone else handle the logistics. You email them the text and the photos, and a few hours later, a professional hands you back a box of finished, polished, perfect products. You don't have to worry about ink levels. You don't have to worry about paper jams. You don't have to worry about folding.
You are buying back your sanity. You're buying back your time.
You are.
Yeah.
And resources like the funeral program site, which the guide mentions, they exist specifically for this. They aren't just generic printers. They are funeral stationery experts. They know that if you order it on Tuesday, you need it on Wednesday morning, no exceptions. They understand the urgency and the emotional weight of what they're doing.
But we have to talk about money. The source is very grounded in the reality that cost is a huge factor. Funerals are incredibly expensive.
Absolutely. Budgeting is a reality for almost everyone. But the expert advice here is that you can manage the costs without sacrificing the meaning. You don't need the most expensive, heavy textured paper with gold foil embossing to have a beautiful, meaningful service.
So what are some of the strategies they suggest to keep the cost down but the quality high?
Okay, first and foremost, stick to standard sizes. A standard letter size bifold, which is just an 8.5 by 11-inch sheet folded in half, is the most economical thing you can print. It fits in standard envelopes, it uses paper efficiently. As soon as you go to an oversized square shape or a custom die-cut shape, the price jumps dramatically because of paper waste and the need for custom cutting.
That makes a lot of sense. Keep it standard.
Second, limit the specialty finishes. Things like foil stamping, embossing, spot UV coating. Those look great, but they are separate manufacturing processes that add significant cost and, just as importantly, time.
And time is the one thing you don't have.
Exactly. And third, and this is crucial, print only the necessary quantity.
The guesstimating problem. You have no idea who's going to show up.
Right. People tend to panic and overorder. What if 500 people show up? Well, you probably don't need 500 folders if you're only expecting 50 guests. Be realistic. And remember, the folder format itself helps here too.
Right, because if you do find a typo after printing,
You're only reprinting the cheap insert, not the expensive cover. If you print 200 fancy folders and find a typo, you've just thrown away hundreds of dollars. If you print 200 inserts and find a typo, you've lost about $10 in paper. That is a massive risk mitigation strategy built right into the product choice.
the underlying value, as the guide so beautifully puts it, is measured by how well it serves the family, not by the price tag. A simple, clean, error-free folder is worth so much more than a fancy, expensive one that arrives late or has mistakes in it.
Amen to that. It's about appropriateness, not expense.
I want to shift gears a little bit to Section 6, which is about cultural nuance, because funerals are, at their core, deeply cultural events, and in many places they're becoming more and more diverse. How does the funeral folder fit into these different traditions?
The folder is actually a surprisingly flexible and powerful tool for cultural accommodation. The source notes that many traditions require specific prayers or languages or formats. For example, bilingual services are becoming incredibly common.
Right. That's a great point. I went to a service recently that was half in English and half in Spanish.
Now, imagine trying to lay out a stapled booklet for that service. What do? Do you put the Spanish translation right under the English text on every page? Do you have English on the left-hand page and Spanish on the right? It gets very text-heavy and cluttered very, very
It
fast.
starts to look like a textbook or a legal document.
Exactly. But with a folder, you can have two separate, distinct inserts. One insert is the order of service in English. The other insert is the order of service in Spanish. You can place them both in the folder for everyone, or, and this is even more elegant, you can have a stack of English inserts and a stack of Spanish inserts by the door, and guests can simply take the one they need.
That is so smart and so respectful. It respects both languages without compromising the clean design of the folder itself.
Precisely. And for religious traditions, sometimes there's a specific ritual reading that is considered sacred or maybe even restricted. Perhaps it's a prayer that only the initiated members of the community recite. You might not want that printed directly next to the announcement about the reception at the country club.
Right. It feels disrespectful to mix the sacred and the logistical on the same page.
The folder allows for a natural hierarchy. You can put that sacred prayer on a beautiful separate card, maybe even on a heavier cardstock that people can keep. And then you can put the logistical stuff, like the map, on a separate, simpler slip of paper. You are compartmentalizing respectfully.
And the advice from the source is crystal clear on this.
Yeah.
Always consult with clergy or cultural leaders.
Yeah.
Ask them, is this text appropriate? Is this the correct version of this prayer?
Always ask, don't assume. The folder is just a tool. The tradition itself provides the rules. But the folder makes it so much easier to follow those rules with grace and elegance.
Now, let's talk about the afterlife of the object. And I don't mean the spiritual afterlife, I mean the physical afterlife of the folder itself. The source has a whole section on the keepsake factor.
This is one of the most touching and I think most profound parts of this whole deep dive. What happens when the service ends? Most people might think, oh, it's just a piece of paper. It gets thrown away or recycled.
I mean, we throw away wedding invitations eventually, right? We throw away birthday cards after a while.
But funeral folders are different. The source observes that a huge number of attendees take these folders home and they keep them. Like, they really keep them for decades.
I know I do. I have a small box in my closet with programs and folders from every funeral I've attended over the last maybe 15 years. I can't bring myself to throw them out.
You are exactly who they are talking about in the guide. These items end up in memory boxes, tucked inside photo albums, placed carefully into Bibles. I've seen them in the glove compartments of cars. People use the prayer cards as bookmarks for years and years.
Why do we do that? What is that impulse?
The guide says the folder becomes a tangible reminder of a loved one's life and legacy. It is a physical artifact from a day that is often a blur. When the person is gone, we crave something we can touch. The folder is the proof that they were here, that this life was lived, and that we were all there together to say goodbye.
It's almost like, for the family, the funeral is a complete whirlwind. They're in shock. They might not even remember who's there. But for the guest, the folder is the souvenir of the relationship, of that final moment.
Yes, and the realization for the family often comes years later. They go over to a cousin's house and they see the folder from their father's funeral sitting on a mantelpiece, or they open their grandmother's old Bible and the prayer card falls out. The source says this moment validates all the effort. It proves that those stressful decisions about fonts and photos actually mattered, because that object is still out there in the world, doing its work of remembrance 10 years later.
That is beautiful. It really reframes the whole stationery conversation. It's not stationery, it's a monument. It's a little paper monument.
It is an artifact of a life, and that's a powerful thing.
We're coming into the final stretch here, and I want to look at the big picture, the whole ecosystem of funeral stationery. Because the folder, as you said, doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's usually part of a larger suite of items.
No, it rarely stands alone. You walk in and there's the guest book at the entrance. You might have large display boards with collages of photos. You'll have the thank you notes that get sent out a few weeks later. You might have small memorial cards distributed at the reception.
So why does coordination matter here? Is it just about being, matchy-matchy? Oh, look, the font on the napkins matches the font on the folder.
It's deeper than just aesthetics, though that's part of it. It's about creating a cohesive experience. When the font on the folder matches the font in the guest book and the colors on both align with the flowers the family chose, it creates a powerful sense of intentionality. It feels like someone cared deeply.
It feels held, like the entire event is being held together by a thoughtful, caring hand.
Exactly. It prevents the experience from feeling fragmented or chaotic. If the guest book is bright red and the folder is a muted blue and the flowers are orange, it just creates visual noise. It can feel disjointed or thrown together at the last minute. Consistency is calming. It non-verbally tells the guests, we have thought this through. You are in good hands. We have taken care of all the details so that you can just focus on your grief.
And again, the role of professionals here seems key. Funeral directors do this every single day. They know how to coordinate these things.
They do. And the source really encourages families to feel empowered to ask questions. Funeral directors can guide you, but you shouldn't feel pressured into anything. Resources like the funeral program site exist to educate without pressure. The goal is to provide tools, not mandates. Folders are not mandatory. If they don't fit your needs or your budget, don't use them. But if you do choose to use them as a tool to help you navigate one of the hardest days of your life.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's try to synthesize what we've learned. We started by saying this was about funeral folders, but really this whole conversation has been about a compassionate guide to navigation.
I think that's the core theme. The funeral folder is a quiet act of care. It provides structure in the middle of chaos. It provides clarity in the fog of sorrow. It serves the living by guiding them through the service, telling them when to stand, what to sing, where to look. And it serves the memory of the deceased by becoming that tangible keepsake we talked about.
It really is that incredible balance of the practical and the emotional. It solves the very real problem of loose paper and the much deeper problem of how do I remember this person all at the same time.
And I think the reflection we should dwell on is that idea that small details carry great meaning. When you are grieving, you don't have the energy for big, grand gestures. You can't rebuild the world. But a small, focused decision like picking a beautiful, simple folder can be a manageable way of channeling your love. It's an achievable act of service for the person you lost.
Simplifying decisions preserves energy for what matters. That is such a powerful lesson for anyone going through this. You don't have to do it all. You just have to create a space, a container, literally, for the memories and the grief to live.
Well said.
So, here is our final provocative thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. We live in a world that is increasingly, relentlessly digital. We have online memorials, we have Facebook tribute pages, digital guest books, we even have Zoom funerals now. And yet, when we walk into a physical funeral, we still instinctively reach for that piece of paper. We want the folder. Why is that?
It's a fascinating question, isn't it?
Perhaps it's because when all the words fall short, and when the digital screen feels cold and distant and flat, we need something tangible. We need something physical to hold on to. We need to feel the weight of the memory in our own hands. Maybe that piece of paper anchors us in the real world in a way that pixels never, ever can.
That tactile connection to memory, that's something technology hasn't been able to replace yet.
And maybe it never will. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of funeral folders, right here on the Funeral Channel Network podcast. We hope this gave you a new perspective on a small but mighty detail of life's final chapter.
It was a real privilege to discuss it.
Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye for now.